Jayaram in May 2017. If it's not based on a note, that line about Nurse Lucy Letby by the incubator, and then comes to what does he say? What does he say? Look. Oh God. It's just been itchy nose. Sorry, itchy nose. I've just been talking with somebody on an account I follow on Twitter, Northern Lass, and I appreciate. I could be completely wrong that line is his memory rather than he's mixing memory, but he is working on notes for some of it. But then I had a bit of back and forth, which is very helpful and very, because I've got the line about Nurse Williams, baby looked after by staff Nurse Williams. Is he keeping that in his mind, in his memory for 15 months, or would he need the notes to tell him that? At the time of deterioration, Nurse Williams was off ward. Has he kept that in his mind? Is that in his mind for 15 months that she was off the ward, talking to the parents? Is that a memory or is that a note that he's basing that on? And I know the lady I was talking with on Twitter saying that it all becomes a matter of fact that Nurse Williams, and it said in the trial, and she said, yes, I went off to speak to the parents. And that's fine, but we're talking about the period, we're talking about May 2017 here, aren't we? And we're assuming then that if it's not based on a note, it's based on he's just got the memory of that. But is it not based on a note then? Is he carrying that as a memory that he's seen probably a good few hundred children and babies in the intervening 15 months, hasn't he? And done a lot of other things in his life. Why is this such a heightened case for him? Well, I think it's heightened. I believe it's particularly heightened because he feels responsible or partly responsible for the death of baby Kay and is in a state of heightened awareness and possibly fear about that and guilt and whatever other emotions and the need to focus on somebody else. That's what I suspect. So when I'm having the interchange on the exchange on Twitter, it's acknowledged that, obviously notes are being looked at here because of all the detail here. He obviously isn't keeping that all in his mind. We've got the 350 date, 350 figure for the time. I mean, that's obviously a note down there, isn't it? This idea that he hasn't got the figure of 350 in his mind, that's in a note that he made around at the time, maybe an hour later or whenever he wrote it up. If it was him that wrote that figure up, we're just missing the notes, the noughts. I realise he's in the later part of the email. It's going into him summing things up. There's no obvious reason for the tube to be dislodged. See, I don't think that is in the notes because they've got this whole thing about him not mentioning. That's something he's worked up later, isn't it? Because he's got to have another reason for it other than him and Dr. Smith putting in two smaller diameter tube, which allows for the 94% air leak. And not understanding the capnograph and all this sort of thing, which he later realises he's responsible, or him and Smith are responsible. And that's why it's so heightened. I'm just bothered by this line. Okay, if let's say it's memory in May 2017 that staff nurse Letby at incubator and called. Why is Nurse Williams and Nurse Letby staff Nurse Letby? Is it staff nurse? B also says staff Nurse Williams as well. Sorry, in the email. Let's say it is a memory. Then it's only a matter of months before the story's changed and he's doing all the stuff about he's hysterical, and when he's in the police interview. In the police interview, then nobody's come. Called Dr. Jayaram. Does call mean physically come out of the room and come to the desk where he is on the telephone trying to get the transport? Is that what called means? Is there a bleeper? Is there any other way to call him? Does it mean physically leaving the room and coming to get him and saying, look, you need to come in? If the alarms are going, he'd hear them, wouldn't he? And he'd come in, he'd go, wouldn't he, with the alarms? He wouldn't need anybody to physically come out to get him in. That's an issue as well, isn't it? If the alarms are going, why would anybody need to come out to get him? He'd be immediately going in, wouldn't he? Or could the alarms be going? He's on the phone, he's trying to do something important, and he's not coming immediately when he should. So a nurse, possibly Nurse Letby, possibly Nurse Oakley, comes out to get him. And say, look, it's really serious, this desaturation. And then he puts the phone down or whatever he does, and he realizes, but wouldn't he come automatically if the alarms are going? And if he first said to the police, I don't remember if the alarms are going or not, but he remembers all this other detail, but he doesn't remember that the alarms are going. And if this is so heightened for him that he feels implicated in the death of baby K, wouldn't he remember the alarms? But maybe the alarms are something he wants to forget because he is implicated in the death because of the medical failures involved here that were partly the reason that baby K sadly passed away a few days later in the level 3 unit. Okay, if, as when I'm chatting with Northern Lass on, that's the name of the account on Twitter, if this is a memory, that line, at time of staff nurse Letby at incubator and call Dr. Jayaram to inform of low saturations. Let's say it was his memory and he's just adding that into the email purely from memory in May 2017. He obviously seems sure about that, but then he becomes even more sure just a matter of a few months later of something that isn't that is in contradiction to that. And we're not even, or does he, at what actual point does he, I don't know, in the investigation, we don't have the record of his police interview, do we? Do we know at what point he says all the stuff about, I was feeling hysterical and I just walked in there and then there she was doing nothing? Do we know when that was said to the police? It might not have been there in the first interview. It could have been a later interview. But what did he say in the first interview then? Did he say this? If he had said this, then that there would have been a record of that, wouldn't there? So he couldn't have said this. In other words, he couldn't have said, Nurse Letby called Dr. Jayaram to inform of low saturations at the first interview. So in a matter of months, he must, I'm assuming, in the first interview, and he's describing this situation, if he does in that first interview, then he must be using the story that he sticks with all through the trial, then, mustn't he? Otherwise, that would have been made much of by Myers, and in the retrial. At the point he actually gets to be talking to the police, if this is a memory rather than a medical note, or purely just a memory rather than, because there's the fact, let's say it's a medical note, let's say it is a medical note, then there's an element of that being a memory as well, because it depends how long after the events, that relying on memory, because it depends how long after the notes were written up. Was it the next day? When was it? Even if it was a few hours later, that's still memory, isn't it? Even if it's an hour ago, you're still remembering it, or 4 hours ago, 5 hours ago. So it's either a note based on memory, or it's a memory without any note attached at all. It's just bothering me that he's got this, because I think another someone else on Twitter said, well, they wouldn't put that as a note, that she's by the incubator. That doesn't sound like a note, a medical note. It sounds like him in his memory. But then would they put Nurse Williams off ward talking to parents on labour suite? And if not, then that's based on a memory as well. Then he's kept that in his mind for 15 months, has he? With like X hundred other cases that he's been dealing with in the 15 months interim period. But then again, I realise it's heightened because of how he feels implicated in the death of baby Kay, I think. So that heightens it for him. So maybe he has got a very sharp memory of what happened here. But then if this memory in a matter of months changes to something else, then that's not him forgetting what he said. That's him actively lying, isn't it? Lying by omission. But lying by omission, but by not repeating the memory that he'd had in May 2017, if he believed that was the truth. And then lying by commission, by saying that categorically that Nurse Letby was there doing nothing, and she had not. I'm talking about the police interview now, not the trial. That she had not asked him for help or asked anybody for help. She's doing nothing. In other words, she's doing nothing to get help from any source. But then if you can't even remember whether it's all down to him, because it's all over the shop. He's all over the shop, isn't it? So how do we even get anywhere near what the reality of what might have happened that night? He's a nightmare. He's a nightmare. And everyone else involved has got such either no memory of it or very patchy memory of it. But then for him to build up this story, he has to end up knowing the exact time. And then obviously, clearly, changing his memory between May 2017 and when he has his first police interview, in which this memory from May 2017, if it is a memory rather than a medical note, is something else. And must incorporate necessarily a lie of omission and a lie of commission. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It seemed, I haven't dropped it completely. The idea that I know everyone's going to think what they want about it. Of course, I'm not. Nobody has to listen to what I'm saying, obviously, or take any notice of it at all. It's just my video, but doing videos about it. But it's just. The other alternative is that he's spoken to other people that were there on the night, and between them they've kind of worked this up. It's not just from him, including perhaps asking Nurse Williams, do you remember that night about baby Kay? What were you doing? Oh, and she reminds to him, oh yeah, I remember baby Kay. I was speaking with the parents, and then that gets incorporated in the May 2017 email. That's what happens then. Because he hasn't got that memory. He needs help with it. In May 2017, I mean. And he's not going to be asking Nurse Letby about anything. Of course he's not, because he doesn't want to. It's about asking other people. But I think there's no. I don't know. I'm stuck on it. Maybe it's become an idée fixe for me that there's some kind of note that was altered there. I could be completely wrong, obviously. The sort of headline of it, very page 6, misplaced ETT endotracheal tube. Misplaced. Sorry, keep needing to sneeze. It's misplaced synonymous with the word he uses in the later part of it, which is dislodged. No obvious reason for tube to have dislodged, Jairam says. And misplaced. Sudden deterioration at 350. So there's that 350 again. It's very specific about it. Well, if it was 350, how did they make that retrial work? How did they adjust the time? I don't believe he's not remembering it was 350, is he? That's got to be from a note, isn't it? He hasn't remembered it for 15 months. It was exactly 350, has he? I didn't get into that with when I was talking on Twitter with some tweets with a few different tweeters. He hasn't remembered that, has he? For 15 months that it was exactly 350. You know, when they ask him and Myers asked him, he said, "Oh well, was it unusual for you to remember the exact time?" And he said, "Oh, I remember looking at my watch. It was 350, and that's when I got up and went." That was the original story before they did the retrial. From the first trial, I remember looking at my watch. It was 350. Then I felt hysterical, etc., etc. And I thought, oh, I must be crazy, but I'm going to definitely have to have a check and look in there. And then he does his spiel about finding Nurse Lucy doing, quote unquote, doing nothing, virtually red-handed, all that kind of stuff. And then presumably he wrote that in a note that it was 350. That's got to be from a note, isn't it? It's not that in the trial in 2022, 2023, that he's remembering the time of 350 back, what would it be? 7 years. It's just not a loose bit of information. He's got that from the note that he wrote, or that someone wrote. I don't know if it was him that wrote that. Do we know that? Or did more than one person confirm it, the time? I don't know. That sudden deterioration at 350 with a misplaced ETT. Misplaced, is that the same as dislodged? Does misplaced suggest the person who placed it in there placed it in the wrong place? Is that what that word suggests? Misplace it. That's an active thing, isn't it? Or am I just reading too much into that? Well, clearly he's not going to be sort of suggesting that he's misplaced, or even Dr. Smith has misplaced it and got it wrong, otherwise it would work against what they're trying to do here. Because this goes back to this thing about what are they up to here? What are they trying to formulate here? And if they are trying to formulate something damning, see, this is my problem with it being just a memory. I think it's more of a mistake by copying the note, potentially. I might be completely wrong, but just, hear me out. It's just the thing that if the whole purpose of this is to find as much damning, they're working up a damning document that they can take to the police. Why would you include the memory that she called him to inform him of the low saturations? Why would you do that? That would be a complete anomaly, wouldn't it, in relation to all the other crashes? Is that right? Would it be an anomaly? Well, it would work against the idea that she's trying to hide what she's doing. And I know that people are just jumping on that and saying, oh, well, that's part of the munch. Oh, no, if they want it, they'll have it that way as well. That, oh, no, well, okay, even if she did do that, that's part of the Munchausen's, because then she wants to see the result of what she's done, and it doesn't stop the idea that the tube was deliberately dislodged, and then the desaturation's happening, and then she's getting somebody to look at it and get involved in it. I know that's what they're saying. I know that's what some of them are saying. But they'll keep doing all that kind of stuff forever, won't they? You can't get anywhere with that. Maybe I've just gone down a rabbit hole here. The timing's bothering me. I mean, it ends up at the retrial with the prosecution winning the case because that time's wrong, because that time can't be right, and Nurse Williams not be there. She has to be there if that time's right. But why is this time coming up in 2017 then? Because it was based on a note made contemporaneously in 2016, however many hours after the event, or maybe even minutes. I don't know how long, and who exactly by, or did multiple people state that that was the time of the sudden deterioration, or just Jayaram? That's why we need the medical notes. We're not going to be given them, are we? I don't know what else to say about it at the moment. Maybe I've gone down a rabbit hole. There's a lot of rabbit holes, isn't there? Why would he... The deliberate lie, that if it's a deliberate lie that happens in his first police interview, the lie of omission that in other words, he's knowingly... When I was talking to Northern Lass on Twitter, she's saying, "Oh, he can't. I'm making that. It was a good exchange. I valued it. It's just she's saying that I'm making the mistake of potentially believing any of his memories, that any of them are right." But okay, that could well be true. But I wasn't. I was thinking it's not based on memory. I think it's based on notes. But then, as I said, notes, even contemporaneous notes, are based on memory, or based on perception at the time, but there could be a time lag of several hours, couldn't there? So then you are dealing with memory, a shorter term memory, but this is 15 months later. But with this, when he goes to see the police, he's saying something very different. And that's not... that's not somebody who... That's somebody who's got to have knowledge that they've changed, this odd phrase, changed their memory, remembered something different. Are we to believe that only a few months later, or even several weeks later, depending on when that first interview was, or the time when he went in that room and punched the air afterwards, was he talking about this then? That he's changed the story and has forgotten what he remembered only a couple of weeks or a few months before, has forgotten what he remembered. So he's doing it unconsciously and just has this new memory, which so happens to be more damning for Nurse Lucy Letby? Or is it that he knows all too well that this won't fly, if it is a memory, this memory isn't strong enough to damn her enough, so they've got to he's got to consciously make it sound worse, then that's not a memory, then that's an active fabrication, isn't it? It's an active fabrication about all the stuff with this hysteria, and then eventually saying there's no alarms and all this stuff, and with the morphine, but principally going in there, and nobody's called him in there. He's just kind of wandered in there in a daze of kind of hysteria because he's frightened. He thinks, oh, I'm going crazy, but I've got to check. That's got to be actively have made up consciously, not a sort of a memory that's just kind of suffused into him that he can't help but follow. Because we see here, only a short time before, he's saying something else if it's based on memory. Do you see what I mean? It's just, it can't be an innocent changing of memory. It has to be an active decision. Decision to remember something else. And what does that mean? I don't even know what that means, but that's a lie, isn't it? Is that not a lie then? Or is the process, I'm trying to get into his head, is the process here in this email, he does remember this. Oh yeah, I remember she came out and said whether the alarms are going or not. Let's say they're not. I mean, if the alarms are going, why isn't he going in there anyway? Why isn't he responding to the alarms? Okay, let's say the alarms aren't going. There's a DSAT, and it is Nurse Lucy Letby in there, even though she's actually probably in a different nursery. But anyway, let's just say it is her. She comes up to the desk where he is. Maybe he's on the phone, waiting to speak to the transport team, making notes, doing whatever he's doing. And when he's writing this email, he actually remembers that. Where am I going with this? So he remembers that. He remembers that in May 2017. But that memory could be wrong. And it could be Caroline Oakley who's come out to see him. Or it could be nobody. But is it likely to be nobody? Is this likely to be a false memory? Well, it could be a false memory. And when he remembers some quote unquote, when he says something else to the police, which doesn't include Nurse Letby coming up to him, is that a false memory, or is that a constructed, deliberate fib? Well, not a fib, a terrible lie, not a fib, a grievous lie, consciously lying in order to actually overturn this memory, which is accurate, of somebody coming up to speak to him, whether it was Nurse Letby or Nurse Oakley or whomsoever. Oh God, I don't know. This is the trouble with dealing with pathological liars, isn't it? I've just had an email from the police today to do with a personal matter, and anyway, and they're telling me about something, and it just involves just utter pathological lying. So anything is possible with people like this, with an Evans, with a Jayaram, with a Breary. Anything's possible. You got I know I'm going off the subject of it. You got Karen Rees meeting with Breary and saying, he never said to me that, oh, if any babies die, it's your responsibility. But he's saying that he absolutely did say that. Well, they can't both be true. I know who my money's on, and it's not Breary. So these people are just, we can't fathom the level of ability for them to lie. And that's why it wouldn't shock me, and I'm sure it wouldn't shock you, dear listener, if you're still with me after all this, me wettering on like this. Dear listener, it wouldn't shock us, would it? If it was a note in some form or other, not exactly in the form he's written it there. doesn't have to be in that form, because this is a kind of transpositions going on here, really, isn't it? Because we've got to accept that he's working from notes for some of it, haven't we? We've got to. And other ones, he might be working from notes, but then he's kind of putting it in his own language, you know. It might not be a literal note. I don't know. I still, it's bugging me. I still think there's a connection to another document, another source here that line's coming from. I could be just rabbit holing it and totally wrong as well. And God knows, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think out there in interweb world? It's just crazy, isn't it? It's because these people are liars, and that's the trouble. We know his memories, he's either a terrible liar or he's got this terrible memory problems. Or is it both? Can he be both? Well, it can be both, actually, because he's, as Northern Lass says, he's being pressured to, well, not pressured, but the police are expecting detail, some solid detail. And they are about building a case up here. So they're telling them things that they're saying they believe or they know that they don't. They're sort of, I don't even know if they're false memories. They might not be memories at all. They're just making it up and then convincing themselves that there's a memory there attached to it. They're just padding it with outright made up stuff, Jayaram and the others. But particularly in this case, this is a real crux case, isn't it, in terms of baby K? I better stop. I don't know if I'm going crazy with it, but it's just, for something, it's not about an innocent change of what he remembers. There has to be active deception going on here. But maybe I'm not saying anything new. I think we know he's deceptive. I just thought, and maybe I'm just not right, I just thought that line is based on some kind of note that, well, it wouldn't surprise us if the notes are being fiddled with, would it? Anyway, I better leave it there. I'll just go crazy. More's going to come out, isn't it? More's going to come out. This isn't the end. This isn't the end of it. Yeah, better leave it there. It's long. God, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Good night. Sleep tight. Heads under blankets, beaks under wings. Apparently that was a thing on the radio back in the 40s or 50s. And then you get the music of Sailing By. I used to listen to that, the shipping forecast. Sailing By. Anyway, good night. Take care. Bye-bye.